All right, let's go on to the next one. And this one looks like a little disaster here, right? So we got 14 beats across the bottom. 14 times 6 is 84. What about the rhythm? Do we have a Q, QRS for every P, a P for every Q? You know what? I can't even see any P's. So I'm not going to say that it's sinus. I just don't see any P's. It's, I don't know, maybe it's coming from somewhere else. So we're not going to say sinus. Let's come back to that. Okay, next, let's look at our axis. And so this, again, it's really hard to say because this bass line is just kind of all over the place. So I don't know. I don't know what the axis is here. I mean, is this up or is this down? And where do you count it from? It's challenging to say. Maybe it's left. Maybe this is down and this is negative and that's positive. Again, but challenging to say. And next we got to do our intervals. The PR, we don't have one. The QRS, this is wide, right? We can all see this. Let's zoom in over here and say, okay, so we start here and we go all the way to here. That's more than one big box, so it's more than 200 milliseconds. And so that's wide. And what about the QTC? That's probably okay. It's on the correct side. But look at the size of these T waves. They're gigantic. So we got for our intervals, I would say that we have a wide QRS. So something weird is going on here. Now let's look at our ST segments and our T waves. And it's challenging to say. It looks like in each one of these leads, the QRS is wide, the T is wide, right? You never see T waves that are this wide, and they're tall. And so this widened QRS, widened T, tall T's, that's characteristic for hyperkalemia. And so this is one that we need to know, that you should be able to pick up this kind of wide wave from it. As this progresses, it starts as tall, sharp T's, and then the T's widen, the QRS's widens, you lose your P waves, and eventually everything stretches out, and it starts looking like a sine wave, they say, because everything kind of just gets stretched out. And our treatment for this, for hyperkalemia, well, the first thing you're going to want to do is give them calcium gluconate. 1 or 2 amps of this stuff. The next thing that I probably would do is I would give them some bicarb, though that probably is going to be shown not to work. What we're thinking that we are doing is we're eating up the hydrogen ion with the bicarb, which then causes the hydrogen-potassium exchanger to push potassium out of the cell, right? This potassium hydrogen ion was eaten up by this bicarb, so they go away. So now we have a lack of hydrogen outside here, so hydrogen comes out, pushing potassium in the cell, and so it's temporary. What else can you do? Well, you can do all the other standard things that you've been taught, including giving a 10 milligram, that's an hour-long neb of albuterol. It works somewhat, but it's very, very, very temporary. You can give insulin and glucose, some D50 and some regular insulin, 10 units. Again, that pushes potassium in the cell again. It's also temporary. You're not getting rid of the potassium, you're just pushing it in the cell temporarily. But the only ways to get it really out of the body, there's 2 things you could do, and those are dialysis and K-exolate. Now, recent literature and people are saying K-exolate may not even get too much potassium on and could also be harmful, but for right now on your tests and the way you're going to practice, you're going to say K-exolate does get rid of the potassium, you're going to give it to them, and dialysis as well. Both of these take a long time, right? You got to get someone access and then hooked up to a machine, and here they got to poop out the potassium. So our things that we need to do are this, really, these are the stars, the calcium gluconate and perhaps the bicarb, which may or may not be awesome. Okay, so for this one, this is a really deadly EKG. If you see this, you should start worrying. This is pathognomic for hyperkalemia, and so treat the hyperkalemia somehow. Calcium gluconate or sodium bicarb. You can do the other things, albuterol, insulin, and glucose, and then get some K-exolate dialysis somehow. You're going to call renal, and you give them the K-exolate and hope that that stuff will work later. Okay, we've got one more EKG we're going to look at, and then we're done.